friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Treat Cart, Ocean Selfie, Mermaid for You, and Fantastic Friends. So I've stamped those images out on Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. So I'm going to start with my mermaid skin, and I wanted to try 3 different skin tones since I have 3 different mermaids today, and they're all going to be just slight variations of each other. So the first one I'm going is with a little bit of a tan skin tone, and that is E00, E11, and E13. So for this little girl up at the top, I'm starting with that E13, adding in some shadow up under her hairline and on the bottom of her arms, the sides of her belly, blending out with the E11 and then using the E00 for a highlight. For the boy, I decided to go with a bit of a darker skin tone, so I'm adding in the E15, using that for my shadows, and then I'll blend that out with the E13. And this time the E11 is going to be my highlight. And I did add a little extra shadow on the right side of his belly and chest area since he's facing just a little bit more toward the left. Then for the last mermaid girl, I decided to go with a paler skin tone. And so I'm going to add in E000. And this time I'm starting with the E11 as my darkest. So all of them have very similar tones, but just by adding a marker here and there on the darker side or on the lighter side, I'm able to come up with 3 different tones. So E11 blended out with E00 and then E000 for the highlight. And then I want to give all of them some rosy cheeks. So for the tanner skin tone, I'm starting with the R22, blending out with the R20. And for the paler skin tone, I am starting with the R20 and blending out with the R11. While I have these colors out, I'm going to color the jellyfish with this combo, placing that R22 on the right hand side so that I can keep the face nice and light, blending out with the R20 down the tentacles as well, and then using that R11 on the face and the ends of the tentacles. And then I'll also just do a few extra accessory images. We'll do some strawberry ice cream in the banana split and also in that bowl with the 3 scoops. And this time I accidentally picked up the R11 instead of the R20 for the mid-tone. So when I started to blend out with the R20, I realized my error, and so I just went back over it with a little R11. I'm also going to do the little bikini top on this bottom mermaid with this combo, and then I will use just the R11 to add a little bit of a pink to the inner part of the conch shell. Then I'm going to keep the R22 and add in R24 and R29. For the cherries on top of the 2 sundaes, I use the darkest 2 shades, the R29 blended out with the R24. I will use all 3 shades for the strawberry sauce that I'm putting on my strawberry ice cream on the banana split. And then I'm also going to color the octopus in red. So I'm starting with the R29. I decided that I wanted to do the spots in a lighter tone, so I'm going to color carefully around those, but I will add some shading with that R29 on the top of all of the tentacles as well. I absolutely love this octopus image. I think he's so darling, and he reminds me of Marcellus from the book Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. If you know, you know. It was my absolute favorite read of 2023, and so every time I see this little octopus, it still makes me think of him. So if you haven't read that book, I highly, highly recommend it. But now I'm going to move on to the mid-tone, which is the R24, and I'm just going to color over the edge of that R29, pull that color out a bit into this mid-tone. Just making sure to go right over the edge of the previous shade and kind of pull it into the mid-tone so that I get a smoother blend. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the R22, just scrubbing over the edge of that R24 to soften it up. And I'll bring that color down a little bit further. And I decided that I wanted to have a fourth shade in there for the lower part of the face and the underside of the tentacles. So I left room for that. So I'll bring back in my R20 for that. And again, just scrub over the edge of that R22 to really soften it up and create a nice smooth blend. And then just fill in the undersides of those tentacles. There's only a tiny sliver of that pink on each of those, but I do think it adds something and just gives it a nice fade. And then I'm also going to fill in the spots on the top of the head with that R20. Then I'm going to move on to some yellows. I'm using Y11, Y13, and Y15. And I'm going to do every other stripe on the top of my ice cream cart. I decided that I wanted to go with a yellow and white theme for the ice cream cart. So I'm using that Y15 to add some shading and then blending out with the Y13, then using the Y11 for the rest. I'm going to do the framework for the ice cream cart in yellow as well. So I'm just adding that Y15 to the outer edges, coloring in part of the wheel well and the handle of the ice cream cart with that Y15, blending out with the Y13 and then the Y11. And at first I wasn't sure if I was going to do the side rails in the yellow or if I would do those in white, but I decided to go with the yellow and just do the whole framework with that combo. Then I wanted to lighten that up, so I added in the Y000, and I'm going to use the lightest 3 shades there for my ice cream, so it can be maybe like a pineapple ice cream. And I'm also going to do a scoop in that little bowl of 3 scoops over on the right. And of course the banana in my banana split. And then I wanted to darken up that combo a little bit, so I'm going to bring in the Y17 and I'm going to do the angelfish with the Y17 down at the bottom, blend it up with the Y15 and then the Y13. And I decided that I actually liked that look better, so I'm going to go over my ice cream once again, just adding in a touch of that Y17 and then blending back over that all with the second layer to just brighten it up. Next, I'm going to use E40 and E41 to do my vanilla ice cream. So I'll do the scoop that is in the hot fudge sundae, the middle scoop for my banana split, and the top scoop of my little bowl of 3. Starting with that E41, blending out with the E40 and leaving a little bit of white cardstock for the highlight, and then going back in with a little extra E41 for some more definition. I'll also use that for the white stripes on my awning. Doing the same thing, just leaving a little bit of white cardstock for the highlight and then going back in with that darkest, the E41, for some more definition. And then I'll do the band across the center of the bottom of the cart. I'll also do the handle of the cart and my tires, all with this combo. And once I'm happy with how that's looking, I will use it for my conch shell as well. Then I'm going to darken up this combo just slightly, keeping that E41 and adding in the E43 and E44, and I'll do my ice cream cone. And I'm also going to do one of the scoops in the banana split. I thought maybe it could be like a coffee or a chocolate ice cream. And I decided to add just a touch of that E43 into that top scoop in the little cup and blend it out with the E41. I'm also going to use these shades for my rocks. So I'm starting with the E44 and kind of just streaking in some color. I'm not being too particular about it because it is stone, so they do have a lot of streaks and striations in it, so there's nothing wrong with not having like a perfect blend for stone. So I'm blending out with the E43 for that, and then I'll come in with a little E41. It was looking a little bit dull for me. I wanted just a bit more intensity, so I am going to darken that up just a little bit. I'm going to bring in E47, and first I'm going to use this for my chocolate sauce. So E47 blended out with the E44, and then using the E43 for the highlight for any of my hot fudge. So on the banana split and on that little cup at the top. I'll also add some spots to my conch shell with these shades just to give it a bit more interest, and also so it doesn't fade too much into the sand at the bottom of the sea. And then I'm just going to throw a little bit of that E47 into the rocks, not too much, but then I'll blend that back out with the E44. And I'll also go in with a bit of that E43 just to help everything kind of pull back together. Then I am going to use the E43 and E41 for a little wooden spoon. And then I'm going to switch to some orange shades using YR04, YR07, and YR09 for my boy mermaid's tail. While I'm at it, I'm also going to do the starfish that's right beside him. And then I also want to have that in at least one other place on the card. So I am going to do the stripe on the angelfish. And then also on that second little sheet that I showed you at the beginning, I did a popsicle with that orange combo. Then I wanted to have a different sauce for my third ball of ice cream in my banana split, so I went with caramel using E33, E35, and E39. And now I'm moving on to purple for one of my mermaid's tails. I'm using V04, V05, and V09 for that. So V09 is on the left-hand side since she's facing more toward the right. Then V05 is going to be the mid-tone, and I'm blending that out with the V04 for the highlight. I'm also going to do my little clamshell with this combo, and I'm also going to do the long skinny fish at the top of the card because I like to have colors show up in at least 3 places, at least the really vibrant colors, to just pull your eye around the scene and repeat those colors. I think it's a bit more pleasing to the eye that way. So I'm just going to finish off my little shell, and then I will move on to some turquoise blues. I'm using BG11, BG13, and BG15 for my last mermaid tail. So BG15 is going to be on the right hand side since she'll be on the right hand side of the card. And then BG13 is the mid-tone, BG10 is the highlight. I'll do the little bikini top of my other mermaid with this combo. Then I will take away the BG15 and add in the BG10 to lighten the combo up a bit, and I'll do the bowls that are holding my ice cream. You may notice that I have not attempted to do any of my mermaid's hair yet, and that is because I was trying to decide the whole time if I was going to go with traditional hair colors or if I was going to go with fun hair colors, and I decided to go with the fun hair colors. So I'm going to do my boy mermaid's hair with this same blue combo. So I just started by laying in the BG10, kind of figuring out where my darkest shades are going to go, mapping those out and building up my colors. So then I added in the BG11, then the BG13, and now I'm going back down in the reverse to just blend that out. And I'm not doing anything too particular because there's no lines drawn in. I'm just drawing in a few simple lines for myself to give the hair a bit of movement. So once I'm happy with how that's looking, I'm going to move on to my next mermaid, and I'm going to go back to my pink combo. So R11, R20, and R22. And I'm just repeating that same process, kind of drawing in those little lines with my lightest shade and then building them up. That way, if I don't like them, I can always color over them with a darker color. That's why I like to start light on hair and then build my way up to the darker colors and then blend back out in the reverse. So my camera battery did die while I was coloring her hair, so I'm not sure that it completely finished on camera. My camera likes to do that. It just kind of shuts off sometimes. So I'm going to finish up her and then I'll move on to my last mermaid. And for her, I'm going to go back to purple, but I didn't want it to be quite so dark, so I lightened it up a bit, kept in the same family, but I went with V0000, V01, and V04 for her. So V04 was the lightest shade that I used in the mermaid tail up above, and also the little clamshell and the fish. So even though I'm only going to have one item that is colored with this lighter combo, it still kind of ties into the other purple items on the card. At least that's the way I was looking at it. Her hair was a little bit trickier for me to figure out just because it's all flowing upwards. So I had to do the lines a little bit different than I would for any normal hair, but I think it turned out nice in the end. So once I finished her off, I'm going to grab a black gel pen and get that going off to the side, go over the eyes of any of my critters that have their eyes open, and then I'm going to trim all of these images out with their matching dies. For my background, I'm starting with a piece of Bristol smooth surface cardstock that I've trimmed down with the Lawn Fawn outside in stitch rectangle stackables, and I am going to work on the ocean part of my background. So I'm starting with some Salvage Patina Distress Oxide ink, and I only need to cover about half of this panel with some ink because the lower half is going to be covered later on. So I'm just adding a good bit of that ink to start, and then I will bring in some peacock feathers to darken that up. I'm going to add that to the top edge, make sure that I have a good bit of that concentrated in the corners, and then just bring it down the sides, and then I'll go back to my Salvage Patina and blend that out and just work back and forth between those two blending tools until I like the way that it is looking. Then I wanted to distress that a little bit, so I'm going to squirt some water onto an acrylic block. And I will pick that up with a thin paintbrush, and I think this paintbrush had a little bit of white paint still in it from a previous project, but that's fine. White works as well. I'm going to let that soak into the cardstock and interact with those distress oxides for a few seconds, and then blot that up with a paper towel. And then I'm also going to add some of both of these inks onto that block, and I will add some water to that to make them a bit more fluid, and I will add some of that distressing to the background as well. This can look like little bubbles in the background. It also just gives some texture and some movement that I really enjoy. So once I'm happy with how that's looking, I'll set that aside to dry and move on to the sand. And for that, I have trimmed it down with the Stitch Simple Wavy Borders. And I am going to bring in some Antique Linen Distress Oxide ink and cover about half of it with this. And just make sure I'm really applying that ink on there nice and heavy so that it will be able to blend with the second shade that I'll be bringing in. So then I'm going to darken that up with some gathered twigs, and I'll add that down at the bottom. And again, I'm working on the bottom edges and also then up the sides a little bit, concentrating on the corner. And I did get a little bit of ink marks on there that I didn't blend out right away, and that was my fault. I let that settle too long into the cardstock. But because I'm going to do some distressing over top of it, it's not really a big deal. You won't really notice it in the final card. So I'm going to work back over with the antique linen and then just go back to the gathered twigs, kind of mixing those two colors together until they're blended nicely. And then I'm going to repeat the same distressing process that I did on the ocean part, starting with some plain water, letting that soak in and interact with those inks for a few seconds, and then blotting it up. And then I'll add some of both of those inks to the block as well and do some splatter with that. And I think adding in all of this texture to the bottom piece also helps it look more like sand and not just like a little patch of dirt or something like that. So I'm going to do that until I'm happy with it, and then I'll set that aside to dry. Once it has completely, I will pop that into my MISTI so I can stamp my sentiment. I'm going to do that in VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And I'm stamping a sentiment from Fantastic Friends. It says Best Fishes. I will stamp that down twice to make sure it's nice and bold, especially on that speckly background. We want to make sure that it is legible. Then I'll pop my card base in my MISTI. I'm using Lawn Fawn Tide Pool cardstock and stamping in Peacock ink. And I'm doing You're Fantastic. Again, that sentiment and the little fish are from Fantastic Friends. And then the mermaid is the last mermaid from Mermaid for You that I didn't use on the front of the card. And now I am ready to start assembling. So I'm going to add my first piece of the background to my card base with some liquid glue, just making sure that I have equal edges showing of that Tide Pool cardstock on all four sides. I'll add my sandy bottom right over top, just lining it up with the bottom corners of the background, and bring in my images. So I've added some foam tape to the back of my ice cream cart, and I'm adding my boy mermaid inside there because he is going to be the one that is serving the ice cream in this little scene. I'm going to add him to the center of the card, and then I'll add a little glue right behind his head to really hold him firmly in place. Then I'll take the larger rock and add that down toward the bottom left to kind of balance out the sentiment. And I'll have my pink-haired mermaid sitting on top of that. I'm also going to tuck in some of the sea grasses down behind the rock and behind her hair. And I'll add the little pennant banner across the front of the ice cream cart. My third mermaid is going to go over on the right hand side, right above that sentiment. And I am also going to add the little extra grasses to the border between the sand and the sea. Then I have my large octopus, which is going to go at the top left corner, kind of coming in to the ice cream stand. And I'll add a jellyfish to the scene as well. I realized I was kind of running out of room. Originally, I wanted him right there by the ice cream cart, but then I checked to see if he would look better somewhere else because I wasn't sure that he was fitting in there, but I just decided to move that large octopus up a little bit so that I had space for both of them without them looking too crowded. I'll have the skinny purple fish swimming up above the ice cream cart, and then the yellow angelfish coming in from the right, filling in that little empty space. Kind of testing out who is going to get to hold the banana split, but in the meantime I'm going to add the other rock over by the mermaid on the right, just above that sentiment. And then I'm just figuring out the placement of all these different little ice cream cones and popsicles and sundaes and things, figuring out what looks best where. And I just switched these around a couple of times, just making sure that I had everything in the right place to spread those colors around the scene and just create the cutest scene possible. And this is the final result here. I decided to go with this, having the mermaid on the left get the banana split. So I added a little piece of foam tape there between her hand and the arm of the handle of the ice cream cart, just to support that a bit. And then my boy mermaid, or merman, is going to be holding an ice cream cone and a popsicle. The octopus is going to get the hot fudge sundae, and then my other girl mermaid over on the right will get the bowl of the 3 flavors of ice cream. And again, I added a little piece of foam tape behind that to support it. And then I'm going to give the girl with the banana split the little spoon to eat that with. Then I'm going to add a little clamshell above the sentiment. I added that with just liquid glue, but I'm going to change my mind and decide to pop that up. I'm going to pop up my conch shell with some foam tape and decided to move that a little bit over towards the big rock. I also added the starfish on that big rock and then decided to add some foam tape behind that clamshell to make everything just be a bit more dimensional. So all that's left is to add a bit of glitter to this scene. So I'm going to add some stardust stickles to my cherries. I also decided to add it to all of my sauces, to the popsicle, the ice cream, and I'm going to add it to my starfish and the clamshell and the conch shell as well. And then I put a few streaks into the mermaid's hair just so they would have a bit of sparkle as well. And then I also decided to add it to the pennant banner. And that is going to complete this card. I'll lift that out to the camera so you can see all of the detail and catch some of the sparkle and shine and give you another peek at the inside. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. I had so much fun creating it. It was just such a fun scene to play around with. If you did like it, please be sure to hit that like button and leave me a comment down below. I love to read your feedback. Subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell if you want to be alerted whenever I post a new video. All of the products I use will be listed and linked in the description bar below in case you'd like to pick up anything for yourself. And if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you had a good one, and I will see you soon in another video. Bye-bye!